Hey guys, welcome back to Out of My Mind. Today we'll be reading Chapter 4, which takes place on page 18 and goes to page 26. If you guys have enjoyed this book so far, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more Out of My Mind. Without further ado, Chapter 4. Doctors. Where do I start? Doctors really don't get me. Mom's a nurse, so I guess she speaks their language, but they sure don't know how to talk to me. I've seen dozens of doctors in my life who all try to analyze me and figure me out. None of them can fix me, so I usually ignore them and act like the retarded person they think I am. I paste on a blank look, focus on one wall, and pretend their questions are too hard for me to understand. It's sort of what they expect anyway. When I turned 5, it was time to think about enrolling me in school, so my mother took me to a doctor whose job it was to figure out how smart I was. She wheeled me in, locked the brakes so my wheelchair would not roll, and made sure the lap strap was fastened. When my seatbelt comes undone, and it does every once in a while, I slide out of that wheelchair like a piece of wet spaghetti. The specialist was a very large man. The bottom button of his shirt had come undone, and his stomach poked through above his belt. Gross. My name is Dr. Hewley, he said in a booming voice. For real, I couldn't make this stuff up. We're going to play a game today, okay? I'll ask you some questions and you get to play with the toys here. Won't that be fun? I knew it would be a long, long hour. He brought out a stack of well-used, hopefully not lead-tainted wood blocks, then leaned in close to me. I could see the pores in his face. Gross. Can you stack these in order according to size? He said loudly and slowly, as if I were hard of hearing and really stupid. But who was being stupid? Didn't he know I couldn't grab the blocks? Of course I knew which blocks was bigger than the other, but I couldn't stack them if he paid me money. So I just took my arm and swept them all to the floor. They fell with a wooden clatter. I tried not to laugh as he picked them up. He breathed really hard as he reached for them. Next, he held up glossy 8x10 cards with different colors painted on each one. Tell me when you see the color blue, Melody, he said in that voice that told me he thought this was all a waste of time. When the blue card showed up, I pointed to it and made a noise. Bah, I said. Marvelous, tremendous, stupendous, he shouted. He praised me like I just passed a test to get into college. If I could have rolled my eyes, I would have. Then he showed me green, so I kicked and made a noise, but my mouth can't make the G sound. The doctor looked disappointed. He scribbled something on his clipboard, pulled out another stack of cards, then said loudly, I'm going to ask you some questions now, Melody. These might be hard, but do your best, okay? I just looked at him and waited while he placed the first set of cards in front of me. Number 1. Which one of these is not like the others? Did he get this stuff from Sesame Street? He showed me pictures of a tomato, a cherry, a round red balloon, and a banana. I know he was probably looking for the balloon as the answer, but that just seemed too easy. So I pointed to the banana because the first 3 were round and red, and the banana was not. Dr. Hewley sighed and scribbled more notes. Number 2, he said. He showed me 4 more cards. This time there were pictures of a cow, a whale, a camel, and an elephant. Which animal gives birth to a calf? Now, I watch Animal Planet all the time. I know for a fact that all the animals he had pictured there had babies called a calf. I thought doctors were supposed to be smart. What to do? I hit each picture slowly and carefully, then did once more just to make sure he understood. I don't think he did. I heard him mumble, cow, as he wrote more notes. It was clear he was giving up on me. I noticed a copy of Good Night, Moon on his bookshelf. I think it was written in Spanish. It was called Buenas noches, Luna. That would have been fun to look at, but I had no way of telling him. I'd like to see the book. After watching Sesame Street and Dora the Explorer a million times, and sitting for hours watching the Spanish channels, I could understand quite a bit of Spanish if it was spoken slowly enough, and at least enough words to read the title of that book. He never thought to ask me about that, of course. I knew the words and melodies of hundreds of songs, a symphony exploding inside my head, with no one to hear it but me. But he never asked me about music. I knew all the colors and shapes and animals that children my age were supposed to know, plus lots more. In my head I could count to 1,000, forward and backward. I could identify hundreds of words on sight, but all that was stuck inside. Dr. Hewley, even though he had been to college for like a million years, would never be smart enough to see inside of me. So I put on my handicapped face and took my mind back to last summer when Mom and I went to the zoo. I really liked the elephants, but talk about stink. Actually, Dr. Hewley sort of reminded me of one of them. My mom and the doctor had no idea why I was smiling as we rolled into the waiting room while he wrote up his evaluation of me. It didn't take long. I'm always amazed at how adults assume I can't hear. They talk about me as if I'm invisible, figuring I'm too retarded to understand their conversation. I learned quite a bit this way, but this conversation was really awful. He didn't even try to soften the news for my mom, who, I'm sure, felt like she got hit by a truck. He began by clearing his throat. Miss Brooks, he then said, it is in my opinion that Melody is severely brain damaged and profoundly retarded. Whoa, even though I was only 5, I had watched enough Easter Seals telethons to know this was bad, really bad. I felt a thud in my gut. My mom gasped, then said nothing for a full minute. Finally, she took a deep breath and protested quietly. But I know she's bright. I can see it in her eyes. You love her. It's only normal to have wishful thinking, Dr. Hewley told her gently. No, she has a spark. More than that, a flame of real intelligence. I just know it. My mother insisted, sounding a little stronger. It takes time to accept the limitations of a beloved child. She has cerebral palsy, Miss Brooks. I know the name of her condition, doctor. My mother said it with ice in her voice. But a person is so much more than the name of a diagnosis on a chart. Good try, Mom, I was thinking, but already her voice was losing its edge, melting into the mushiness of helplessness. She laughs at jokes, my mother told him. The ice in her voice replaced by desperation, right at the punchline. Mom's voice faded. What she was saying sounded ridiculous, even to me, but I could see that she just couldn't find the words to explain her gut feeling, that I had some smarts stuck in here. Dr. Hewley looked from her to me. He shook his head and then said, You're lucky she has the ability to smile and laugh. But Melody will never be able to walk on her own or speak a single sentence. She would never be able to feed herself, take care of her own personal needs, or understand anything more than simple instructions. Once you accept that reality, you can deal with the future. That was just plain mean. My mom hardly ever cries, but she did that day. She cried and cried and cried. Dr. Hewley had to give her a whole box of tissues. Both of them ignored me while she sobbed and tried to find nice words to say to make her feel better. He didn't do a very good job. Finally, he gave her options. You and your husband have several decisions to make, he told Mom. You can choose to keep her at home or you can send her to a special school for the developmentally disabled. There aren't many choices here locally. Where do you get those almost pleasant-sounding phrases to describe kids like me? Mom made a sound that could have been the mewing of a kitten. She was losing it. Dr. Hewley continued, You can also decide to put Melody in a residential facility where she can be cared for and kept comfortable. He pulled out a colorful brochure with a smiling child in a wheelchair on the cover and handed it to Mom. I trembled as she took it. Let's see, the doctor said. Melody is 5 now. That's a perfect age for her to learn to adjust to a new environment. You and your husband can get on with your lives without her as a burden. In time, her memories of you will fade. I stared at Mom frantically. I didn't want to be sent away. Was I a burden? I never thought about it like that. Maybe it would be easier for them if I weren't around. I gulped. My hands got cold. Mom wasn't looking at me. She was staring daggers at Dr. Hewley. She crumbled up the tissue she held and stood up. Let me tell you something, Doctor. There is no way in heaven or hell that we will be sending Melody away to a nursing home. I blinked. Was this my mother? I blinked again, and she was still there, right up in Dr. Healy's face. She wasn't finished. You know what? My mother said, as she angrily hurled the brochure into the trash. I think you're cold and insensitive. I hope you have never have a child with difficulties. You probably put it out with your trash. Dr. Healy looked shocked. And what's more, she continued, I think you're wrong. I know you are. Melody has more brains hidden in her head than you'll ever have, despite those fancy degrees from fancy schools you've got posted all over your walls. It was the doctor's turn to blink. You've got it easy. You have all your physical functions working properly. You never have to struggle just to be understood. You think you're smart because you have a medical degree. He was wise enough to keep his mouth shut and ashamed enough to lower his head. Mom was on a roll. You're not so intelligent, sir. You're just lucky. All of us who have all of our faculties intact are just plain blessed. Melody is able to figure out things, communicate, and manage in a world where nothing works right for her. She's the one with the true intelligence. She marched out of his office, then, rolling me swiftly through the thick doors. In the hall, we did a quick fist bump. Well, the best I could manage. My hands were no longer cold. I'm taking you right now and enrolling you at Spalding Street Elementary School, she announced with determination as we headed back to the car. Let's get busy. I hope you guys enjoyed that chapter, and if you did, stay tuned and hit that like button, and I will see you guys next time.